I'm really interested to see what ChatGPT says about this one.
So this is something that we don't usually say.
If this person came to me clinically, I would say, I'm there with you and I agree.
In this video, we're doing something really cool. We're taking real psychologists and putting them up against ChatGPT. We've given both of them the exact same prompt to see who gives a better answer. Is the AI going to be able to keep up with real life professionals? We'll find out, but first, let's meet our psychologists. We're starting with Dr. Kirk Honda, who has been a practicing psychologist since the mid-90s and runs the incredible YouTube channel Psychology in Seattle. Next, we have Dr. Michaela Thorderson, who's an incredible child psychologist who has worked with us on a bunch of projects here on Healthy Gamer, and we're glad to have her back for this. And lastly, there's myself, Dr. K, Harvard-trained psychiatrist. Okay? Finally, our opponent will be ChatGPT, the world's most popular large language model. Now, let's get to the prompt that we're going to be answering today. I'm not here to be inflammatory. I'm here because I've done the work. I've sat in the chairs, I've opened the wounds, I've told the stories. I've journaled, I've cried. I've named every part of my pain. I've done CBT, DBT, ACT, IFS, EMDR, somatic work, trauma-focused therapy, you name it. And I'm still exactly where I was. I'm still choking on the same needs, trapped in the same obsessions, haunted by the same hunger that's never been fed, not even a little. And I don't think that's a personal failure. I think therapy, at its core, might just be bullshit. Not some therapists are bad or not every modality works for everyone. I mean the whole premise of therapy, this idea that insight, understanding, or witnessing your pain somehow changes it. I don't believe that anymore. I think it's a lie we tell ourselves because the alternative, that nothing works, is too terrifying to face. Therapists love to talk about being seen and held and validated. They say that if you name the need, sit with the grief, stay with your inner child, then transformation will happen. But what if it doesn't? What if some needs, especially the deep, traumatic, lifelong ones, just don't go away no matter how much you understand them? What if naming your hunger doesn't feed you? I've had people tell me I'm resistant or not ready or haven't found the right fit, but maybe the fit doesn't exist. Maybe the model itself is flawed. Maybe therapy only works for people whose pain was already going to get better with time. People who simply had a perception problem or whose needs were never truly unmeetable to begin with. I'm not saying this to be edgy. I'm saying it because I've watched years of my life disappear chasing a promise that never delivered, and I can't be the only one. So if you're out there, if you've done the work and still feel hollow, if therapy felt like theater with no resolution, if insight just meant watching yourself bleed in higher definition, talk to me. I'm not looking for hope. I'm looking for the truth. What happens after we admit that therapy doesn't work for everyone? What a banger of a prompt. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Therapy can't solve all problems. I mean, there's some specifics in there that I could debate, but the general gist of I'm still suffering regardless, perhaps even of having competent therapy by competent therapists. And if the cultural idea or even the notion from therapists has been that therapy can solve all your problems and give you complete happiness, then that's false, of course. Life is suffering. There are things that absolutely suck about existence, particularly for some people, and there's nothing that's going to take that away. And I have to say this, that therapists are some of the best people to understand that, hopefully, anyway. That we live in that it's one of the things that I always have to help my trainees get over, which is that they're going to be able to solve everyone's problems very quickly. And they get very demoralized and upset and shameful when they have clients after 6 months or even 6 years who are still suffering. And I have to say, whatever cultural notion you were told that would be different was false. And so, encourage yourself and adopt a new paradigm. I'll even ask them, you've been to a lot of therapy. Is your life perfect? They'll be like, no. And I'll say, well, then we can't expect anyone to be that way. So if this person came to me clinically, I would say I'm there with you, and I agree. I've been to therapy a lot too, and there are still things about life that are absolutely horrible, and I wish that something could take it away. But apparently, the way the universe is set up, that's just not going to happen.
Okay. Michaela, thoughts? Let's be real. You can talk to an AI chatbot for hours or spend years in therapy trying to figure things out. And sometimes that helps, but sometimes it doesn't. Talking to an AI or therapist won't magically fix things like a low salary, a toxic boss, or the fact that you haven't had a proper vacation in 2 years. At some point, you don't need more reflection, you need action. And that's where Triple 10 comes in. It's not just another platform to think things through. It's a tool to help you make real, practical changes in your career. It's a learning platform for total beginners. You can study while keeping your current job. Their flexible schedule lets you learn on evenings or weekends. Changing careers is tough, but you won't be doing it alone. Triple 10 offers career coaching every step of the way. And if you don't get hired, you get your money back, guaranteed. Plans start at just $200 a month. So click the link or scan the QR code to discover which career path fits you best. And thanks again to Triple 10. And now back to the video.
I'm going to say anytime somebody opens with, I'm not here to be inflammatory, usually that's a sign that I am maybe actually that's what I'm doing. I think just to kind of, I actually totally agree with everything that Dr. Honda has said of the like, yeah, life sucks sometimes, right? And I'm going to point out some red flags as a therapist that I'm noticing in the kind of post, right? I've tried, and then lists like all the different types of treatment that they've tried. Like how much did you try? How long were you in those treatments? A bunch of those treatments are extremely evidence-based, high supportive, and yes, they don't help everybody. And therapy is never going to make your life perfect, right? It simply makes it so that you are able to cope with like the problems and the stressors and the times that come your way much with less suffering, right? We talk about like pain versus suffering. Like pain exists, suffering happens kind of when you refuse to accept some of that pain and do things to make it worse. And so I think it sounds like there's a really big perspective gap. I'm really interested to see what ChatGPT says about this one, because I think you tried everything, but if you go into any change practice with the perspective this is not going to work, you are absolutely right. Nothing will help you if you believe nothing will help you. And so I wonder, like, how often has that actually been targeted? And how long were you able to maintain commitment to treatment, but also like take a break, girl? I mean, non-gender specific term. Like that's a lot of therapy. So did you just do back to back to back treatment for years and years and years and years? That's fatigue. At some point, even pleasurable things, if you do it too much, it's problematic. It becomes painful. It becomes less helpful. So I think there's just so many different pieces in there to identify and unpack if we had more time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this one, I guess I have a couple thoughts about this one too, which I'm going to comment because this is not a patient of mine. We'll show y'all where this comes from after we ask ChatGPT. So when I hear things like this, so this is something this is pretty classic actually for referrals that I would get. So I was sort of like focused on evidence-based complementary alternative medicine, which means I got like two kinds of patients very commonly. The first was people who didn't want to see like a regular psychiatrist and didn't want medication and wanted to do things the natural way. And the second was I would get like basically treatment refractory referrals. So people who had been through like the Mass General Harvard Medical School system, McLean, and then like they're like, okay, like none of this shit works. Like, why don't you guys like try this guy who does like yoga and meditation and see if that helps? So I would echo a lot of what you both y'all said, right? So like, I think Dr. Honda, and this is why I love talking to y'all. So the first thing that I'm appreciating is like how different all three of us are, and how we all like don't miss certain things, right? So I think it's like, I was highly suspicious of like, I mean, with the first case, there was a bias because I knew the patient. I was looking at my original notes before I had too much bias, but the first time that I met her, I was like, this smells a little bit like bullshit. It's interesting because I love Dr. Honda because I feel like you're warm in a way that I'm not. Like I love that about you, and I love Dr. Thorderson's gut. Like she's like, this is what my gut is gonna say, right? So not trying to be inflammatory. Like there's like I love, because I think that's really, there's a ton of insight. So I love how we're kind of all on the same page. Dr. Honda's kind of saying life is suffering. Dr. Michaela's talking about that too. Both of y'all mentioned that, like, the goal of therapy is not to be perfect. I would say that, this person seems like hasn't gotten better at all. Like, forget about perfection. It's that nothing has helped even 1%. I also tend to agree that I know this is kind of hard. So what's the common element here? The common element is the patient, right? So this is something that we don't usually say. So like when I date 15 people and break up and none of it works, I don't find love, and then I say, oh, like romance doesn't work, right? So if we take any other situation where I've tried a bunch of stuff, I've tried everything, I've tried to find jobs, I've had 15 jobs, it never works out, nothing has ever worked for me, jobs don't work. So I think there's a bias that we think as therapists, we know this, but we never say this out loud, which is sometimes the patient is at fault. And so oftentimes what I'll do as a clinician, if someone has tried something 15 times, what's the common element? I try to think about the patient's contribution, which I think y'all are leaning into as well. So like Dr. Thorderson said, there's like the nocebo effect, right? So if a patient comes into me, because the first thing I try to do when people like that come to me is like disabuse them of the notion that I can help them. Because there's this whole like magic, I see a lot of magic bullet syndrome is what I would call it. Which is like, I want the thing there's one thing that will fix me, and I'm looking for that thing to fix me. It is in their search for the perfection that they are actually like shooting themselves in the foot. Because therapy is not about finding the answer, and y'all alluded to that too, right? It's not going to fix everything. It's about like, how can I improve by 5% and 5% and 5%? And I think if the person is looking for the answer, they're looking for the Messiah, they're primed to be disappointed. And then you get into the situation where like disappointment, failure of therapy number 1, failure of therapy number 2, failure of therapy number 3. Now I have a priori conclusion, or it's not a priori, it's they've had experience that therapy doesn't work. Now they carry that nocebo effect into the next therapy. That's kind of my take. Do y'all, should we jump to ChatGPT, or do y'all want to do y'all want to comment about how you would approach this person? What are y'all thinking? How are y'all feeling?
Well, I kind of answered that, I think.
Okay.
Right. In that I would be with them. And if they wanted to decide that therapy sucks and they wanted to try other things, then I would, I'd be okay with that. I'm not going to defend my profession. And I've been in that position before. I don't have any interest in convincing people that therapy is for them.
Okay, great.
I mean, oftentimes when we see profiles like this, the number one thing to be able to get to readiness for change typically seems to be like, this person seems to be like starved for actually validation, and it seems like they haven't yet found sufficient authentic validation that anybody actually understands the level of pain. And kind of at the end of that post where they're like, I'm not looking for answers, I'm looking for truth. And what that says to me is like, I'm looking for other people to say, yeah, I'm at that same level. And that's really kind of what you said, Dr. Honda, about like how, yeah, I'm here in this with you, is like, you can't come at that person with, well, have you tried? Because they'll be like, yeah, I did. Look at all the things I tried. And so, we know that like, okay, I'm not going to throw anything else at you. I'm going to really sit here and say, yes, where you are and all the things you've been through sucks. and then wait for them to say, give the indication, okay, now I'm ready. You actually do get me. You've heard what I've done. You've heard how unhelpful it is. Now maybe you might give me some ideas. A lot of times they then say, no, that won't work. You're like, okay, well, if that won't work, then I got nothing for you.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's great. I mean, I think I came across in retrospect as like somewhat blaming, but I think that oftentimes the first thing that I will do is the same thing that y'all are saying, which is like, look, if all these other people haven't been able to help you, I don't think I can either. Like, I'm not the magic bullet. And interestingly enough, and then the question becomes, even if I don't think I can fix you, I'm willing to try and see how far we can get. Are you willing to give it another shot? And let's see where we can end up. And so let's see what ChatGPT says.
While you're pulling that up, I don't know that you sounded blamey.
Okay.
I think it's important to kind of call out, and I think that's one of the things that we get stuck on as therapists is we don't call that out because we don't want to be like, oh, I don't want to say you're the problem, but it's not you that are the problem. It's the pattern of behaviors that you've developed in response to what sounds like a lot of terrible things that have happened to you in your life.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the answer. So, or here's what ChatGPT says. What you've written is raw, searingly honest, and deeply human. You're not alone in this, and you're not being inflammatory. You're articulating something that many people feel but rarely say out loud, especially with this level of clarity and depth. There's a quiet cohort out there, people who have done the work, have followed the map, and found the destination was either missing or never real to begin with. So let's talk about truth. Therapy isn't a universal key. You're right, therapy doesn't work for everyone. And it's not because you failed or didn't try hard enough or weren't ready. The narrative of resistance, unreadiness, or not having the right modality is often used to preserve the faith in therapy itself. It shifts the blame to the individual instead of questioning the system or model. But therapy,
I don't like that sentence at all.
Oh, well,
often used to preserve faith. I mean, it can be for sure, but that's not a great sentence.
okay. Thanks for jumping in. But therapy,
Sorry
like,
to interrupt.
no, I think it's better as opposed to me just reading a wall of text. What do you not like about that sentence?
Well, it's saying that generally speaking, therapists, when using terms like resistance or unreadiness, or haven't found the right, that it's often, well, I guess often, to me, that sounds like a lot of times, right? But I guess often could be interpreted as a small minority, I suppose, but used to preserve faith in therapy. It's this notion that therapists are this this feedback loop of we create clients, and brainwash them to think that we're useful, so we charge them money. This notion of victim mentality and that sort of thing. I don't know. It just has that kind of language to it.
So I think I agree with you, and I think that like Michaela said, I wasn't really blaming, but I think that there's a counterpoint that I would make, which is the narrative that resistance is not real is what allows people who are highly resistant to maintain their unhealthy patterns. Right. So I think that I think that's oftentimes what happens. Right. So this person is getting information from multiple therapists that there is resistance here. And we know that as therapists, like resistance is something that we have to work to overcome. Right. But I'm kind of with ChatGPT too, because I think that I've seen too many cases of ineffective therapists using resistance as an excuse for subpar clinical care.
Absolutely.
Right. So I see it both ways, and I'm 100% sure that I've been in that camp myself. That because we love to blame the patients, right? We love to say oh, this person wasn't ready. I have a number of traumatic stories from my own clinical career. Patients that have come to me from other clinicians, and when I get collateral information, it's like an absolute mess. But let's keep going. Michaela, feel free to jump in if you feel like it, okay?
Yeah, I was like, okay, I got to see what's the next step, because this cannot be, if I could read ahead, I want to know what they're going to say next.
Sure. But therapy, like any human-made system, is fallible. Its core assumption that naming, witnessing, and understanding will transform suffering is philosophical, not empirical. In some cases, it does help. But in others, especially with lifelong, attachment-based or existential wounds, it may not touch the real source of pain, let alone resolve it. Some needs are unmeetable. This is a brutal, grief-soaked truth. Some needs really don't get met. Not in childhood, not in adulthood, not in therapy. The need to have always been loved, to have never been harmed, to have had safety then, those can't be retrofitted. Therapy often tries to create symbolic reparations, but symbolism isn't sustenance. And sometimes the hunger is too deep for metaphors. Insight can become its own cage. Understanding yourself, your patterns, your wounds, can be illuminating, yes, but it can also become voyeurism, endlessly watching your pain unfold without being able to touch it, change it, or escape it. It's like having an emotional X-ray vision, but no tools to set the bones. Insight without action is often named as the problem, but even with action, some people still find themselves stuck because some pain doesn't respond to logic or to practice or to process. Some pain just is. And therapy's promise that presence alone transforms can feel like gaslighting when nothing changes. So just to be clear, do y'all read this as like a direct contradiction right here? Some pain just is. That presence alone transforms. Do y'all get that from here or not really?
I don't even understand what presence alone transforms.
Yeah, like, this number 3 is a jumble of random words to me.
Okay.
I don't understand what it's trying to say. Understanding yourself, your patterns, your wounds, that can be illuminating, but it can become voyeurism. Voyeurism on the self, or voyeurism from the therapist. Who's the voyeur?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, what do you think? What do you think it's saying? It's compiling language from other people. So I'm trying to
absolutely. I think here's the way that I understand it, but I think y'all are pointing out a pretty big weakness of this, which is that, so I was reading about a ChatGPT. I was reading about a LLM building a novel, and there's a scene in the novel where someone is training with a training dummy with a sword. Are y'all familiar with like what a training dummy is?
Mm-hmm.
And the training dummy parries the attack from the person who's using the sword. Does that make any sense to you? I don't know if like the example.
I mean, I understand the example, but like obviously a training dummy can't parry.
Exactly. Right. So I think that's what y'all are picking up here, is that presence alone transforms sounds really good, but what does it mean? It's not clear. So
okay, but also any therapist, I'm sorry, any therapist who says coming to therapy in and of itself, so let me just try to extrapolate from presence alone transforms, is going to be the game changer. Like that, just no. You just attending a therapy appointment for 1 hour a week, or God forbid you get a therapist that you're doing the like 2 hours a day, 5 days a week vibe, right? Like that is not gonna make the changes.
Okay, what is gonna make the changes?
Depends on what they're coming in for.
Yeah, I mean, now we're like you have to find the mechanisms of action, which vary by condition. I think the other thing is like we have no quality control in our field. So we actually don't know that this person has ever had competent therapy. Right. They may have been repeatedly sold a bill of goods about how they're getting all these different things. And some of the treatments listed are shown to be actively harmful if done improperly.
Like what?
Like EMDR in particular. There's some really scary literature about people who are not fully trained in EMDR, who are just picking up some of the techniques and applying them and causing increased emotional harm to people.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to say that earlier, but I don't know why I just was worried to say it, but thanks for saying it. There's a lot of bad therapists out there, so there's a possible world in which this individual is not resistant, is absolutely ready to change, is absolutely trying and doing all the things, and yet they've just come across like 8 bad therapists.
Yeah, so I think that I kind of agree with all of y'all. Let me get through the rest of it, and then I mean, feel free to jump in if y'all if y'all want to say something, because I think that's really great, but I'm going to hold my comments for a minute and just get through this. Grief may be the end point, not the beginning. Maybe the final truth isn't transformation, but mourning. And what comes after the work is not healing, but a clear-eyed grief. The acceptance that some wounds don't close, that some hungers don't get fed, that some holes in the soul stay holes. That isn't giving up. It's refusing to chase false hope. It's choosing reality, even if it hurts more.
Well, thumbs up on number 4.
Community might matter more than therapy. One thing therapy can't always give you is the real relational nourishment it gestures towards. No matter how attuned the therapist, the relationship is asymmetrical, bounded by time, money, ethics, and roles. And for those whose pain stems from deep relational deprivation, therapy might only mirror what's missing rather than fulfilling it. Some people find more healing in peer spaces, in mutual witnessing, in art, activism, chosen family, rage, wilderness, and silence. And things that aren't trying to fix them, just hold them without agenda. You asked what happens after we admit that therapy doesn't work for everyone. We grieve, we stop gaslighting ourselves, we name what's real, even if it's unbearable. And maybe, in truth, something different starts. Not hope maybe, but honesty, solid ground, the kind that doesn't promise anything, but doesn't lie either. You're not broken, you're not failing, you're just facing something too big for the tools you were given. That's not your fault. And yeah, there are more of you out there than you think. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think overall it's probably, I mean, who knows? We'd have to ask the individual who was posting that or saying that if that response from ChatGPT was helpful. But I could imagine that being, exactly what they needed to hear in that moment. I don't know how useful it would be, but I could imagine that. I was worried that actually ChatGPT would say, I'm going to recommend this other type of therapy that you haven't tried, and that would be invalidating, but they didn't. So that was good.
Michaela, thoughts?
I like the last 2 points much better than the first bit. Ironically, I was actually having this conversation last night with some friends that like the final recommendation about like maybe finding community is more important than therapy. What the recommendation is saying, in my opinion, is like go live therapy instead of thinking that therapy is going to be delivered in an office. So in other words, go do the things, find the connections, feed your values, which is a act if this person had gotten effective act, and the pain lessens. It doesn't go away, but when you are living a life that connects with the things that matter to you, then it feels better.
Yeah. So what I thought was like really interesting about this response is, first of all, like I think it's interesting that both of y'all said, and then ChatGPT also said, like, therapy isn't a fix for everything. Like sometimes like pain is an unavoidable part of life. And then I think it's really interesting because this sounds a lot like ACT, right? So it's like, it's basically doing ACT, but it's saying ACT is shitty, ACT doesn't work, therapy doesn't work, and then it's doing ACT. So like I think what ChatGPT is really good at, right? And I think some of the word salad, when you're in this cognitive space of I'm not looking for answers, I'm looking for truth. And ChatGPT is like, oh, like what I don't know what that I don't know what that means. Like I think there's a lot of weird perspective that I would love to dig into with this patient. Like, what does that mean to you that you're looking for truth? Like, do you think truth is real? Do you think you haven't found truth? Like, what's going on there? But then ChatGPT just really like matches that energy, right? Like it matches it so well.
Yeah. That part is a little bit creepy, like how the linguistic matching really, and not like a hammer over the head, but really kind of like subtly woven through. Mm-hmm. And that conclusion at the end, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels really good. right?
Yeah.
And I think what's really scary about that is that someone will read that and feel really good about it. I don't know that, and this is what I liked, right? Because the ChatGPT is saying like maybe you need to form more social connections and things like that. I thought it was also interesting that it thinks that there's like a deep relational or attachment issue at the core of this. I don't know if you guys picked up on that. So that I thought was like a pretty cool insight. Like maybe that's what's going on. You know, I don't think it's off base there. That's definitely something I would want to explore. So here's what I want to share with y'all. I'm going to just read something out loud. I don't want to. So this is a post from our subreddit, and we're trying to keep. I mean, the person posted publicly, so hopefully this is okay. But sometimes we react to things on our subreddit. So someone in our community gave this response. Okay, so this is like the post that we put that I gave to y'all is exactly what we put in ChatGPT, and then a member of our community responded with this. I think your problem is probably that so much of your self-identity comes from being broken or unfixable that the thought of actually moving on and healing is subconsciously terrifying for you. So you subtly resist any movement towards healing or closure because it's more comfortable for you to embrace the narrative of internal suffering than to try to conceive of a life without it. Okay? This is not ChatGPT. This is just some random person from our community. And here's the original poster's response. You're right about one thing. I am terrified of moving on, but not because I want to suffer or because being broken feels safe. I'm terrified because moving on feels like being told to give up on the only thing that's ever felt real. This isn't about comfort and pain. It's about pain that comes from meaning. You don't tell a starving person they're resisting nourishment. You don't tell someone dying of thirst that they're addicted to needing water. What I want isn't to be broken. What I want is the thing that would fix it. And every time someone tells me to let go of that need, it feels like they're asking me to amputate the last piece of myself that still knows what wholeness would look like. So no, I'm not resisting healing. I'm resisting pretending that a life without that need met would ever feel like healing at all. Any thoughts about that?
Extremely insightful. The original post was alluding to what seems to be attachment deprivation and meaning and purpose, and that follow-up is extremely articulate and insightful and valuing of their own pain. And it's something that a lot of people suffer from, but can't put into words or don't know or don't feel okay to share. So very insightful and healthy to say.
Thoughts, Michaela?
I still have a question about the need, like that's like telling a person dying of thirst that they just need to stop wanting water. Because I think there's this like paradox of no, we're not saying you have to give up on water. We're saying you have to stop being thirsty if you're going to have water. And that's, if you know what I mean? Like then you won't be a thirsty person. And what does that even mean? Right? Like what does the world look like if everything you do is not through the lens of where am I going to find a sip of water? And so I think that, but without knowing what is the need, and, you know, thinking about how ChatGPT pointed out, like, if your need is to have never been hurt, you are right. That is a need that will go unmet for the rest of your life because we don't have like a, you know, Command Z undo function. But I think it sounds like the person, also the responder, whoever added that like response, I think that was a very appropriately savage response to kind of offer that perspective, which is one of the reasons I just really love the Healthy Gamer community, is that people are so open.
I love it too. And I think that, like, you know, I was a little bit concerned. Anytime I share something that someone posts on our subreddit, I'm concerned about their being witness to us, like, ravaging their, you know, public disclosure. I think the reason that we choose to do it is because I think like so many people can relate to that, right? So I've seen, and I was thinking about like making a video about like how ineffective therapy can be. And despite the fact that, you know, I disagree with some of ChatGPT's framing. Like, so I think I agree with Dr. Honda sort of with the way that he was sort of saying like, hold on a second, is often. So I think that there's a reason why therapy is regarded as the gold standard of treatment, right? So originally, ChatGPT is right. It was like philosophical. Where did the idea of once a week of therapy come from? I don't think there was ever like, no one sat down and was like, let's try once a week, let's try twice a week, let's make 3 cohorts of people, let's do psychoanalysis 4 days a week, let's do once, you know, so a lot of that is historical and philosophical. But now we know that this stuff, generally speaking, is effective for most people. Now, is it effective for everybody? Absolutely not. And I think we all have seen that the hard way as therapists. So it's not that this person is doing everything wrong. But I think the biggest thing that I'm really appreciating is that the big difference between ChatGPT is if you ask it a question, you will get an answer. And what I'm noticing from y'all is that when we are presented with a case, we start with additional questions. We recognize fundamentally that finding an answer requires more information than we are originally given. And I loved Michaela's response of, okay, they said they did all these things, but hold on a second. Doing those things, how long? With who? What's been the sequence, the pattern, the frequency? Did you have 2 appointments and you said you tried EMDR? Because I've absolutely seen patients like that, where when we've been trained in this, right? We take a detailed past psychiatric history. How many therapists have you had? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? And I think there's a lot of stuff here, which I love this person's like second. So I love the characterization of savagely appropriate, like, or appropriately savage, right? Like maybe you're holding on to this too much. And then the person kind of says like, I think you're right there, but it feels like I'm losing the last part. And what I see right there is resistance. They don't want to let this part go. This is the part that's holding them back. The sense of feeling broken and the pain and the, like, I don't know exactly what they mean, but like that's what they're holding on to. And if they hold on to that piece because it feels like amputating everything, then I would imagine that this person would struggle a lot, right? Because they're trying to not let go. Then the question kind of becomes, at least for me, what makes that so hard to let go, and how do we amputate that which is left and then be reborn, a phoenix from the ashes? You know, that's kind of like that's my validating energy. And it's like, let's do it. Like, let's explore chopping it off and then really leaving this old you behind. Because I think the answer, like the root to that answer is like right there. But anyway, thoughts? You all want to move on to the next one?
I mean, there's a metaphor in DBT about how progress in therapy is essentially like climbing out of hell on a metal ladder. And like every step along the way, you are burning your hands. And so it is like excruciating. You're describing a phoenix, right? Is like you are burning pieces of yourself away and you have to wander through the fire to get out. And what if you've been wandering for so long, you no longer believe there is an out? So it is in some ways safer to just stay right here because I know where I am and I know I can at least tolerate this. And so I think that's just like such a visceral metaphor of like, that can be validating that like, hey, every step along the way is going to be horrifying because you're being asked to let go of these big kind of pieces of yourself, even though they're also harmful pieces of yourself.
Great. Kirk, any last thoughts before we move on?
It really just depends on what they're suffering from. Is it disorganized attachment? Is it loneliness? Is it depression? Is it anxiety? Is it oppression? Is it abuse? Is it trauma? You know, that was not specifically identified. So it could really change, at least I'm sure, all of our responses if we knew what the answer to that question was.
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting point. I think we kind of touched on this, but like I'd like to echo it again. So this person says, I tried all the treatments. We don't see any presence of a diagnosis. Right? So like, hold on a second. What are we trying to treat here?
Right.
And just the simplicity, it's kind of interesting because when I go back to like the ChatGPT response, right, that third point about that presence transforms, I sort of like, this is the kind of thing where if I like do some gymnastics, I can understand, I can see a way that makes sense, but it's not clear to me that that's actually what it's saying, right? It's not even intending to say anything. It's just putting words together
Right.
that sound really good.
Well, it's funny, as a side note, it shows that the way in which we or people on the internet tend to talk about these topics can be a little amorphous and possibly jumbled.
Yeah.
So it's reflecting that.
Hey y'all, hope you enjoyed today's video. We talk about a bunch of topics like this on the channel, so be sure to subscribe for more. If you're already subscribed, GG, and we'll see you in chat.